My name's John, and this is Simon. We've worked as content creators for some time and wanted to share delicious knowledge from the cookie jar. So if you got some time, you're welcome to the NavBar. Hello! Welcome to the first stream of this three-part series where I am going to build a super over-engineered app to display our show notes for each episode of the NavBar podcast. So if you haven't checked out the NavBar podcast yet, let me just share my screen. The NavBar is a podcast by myself and Simon Brashley-Otis, aka Simon Swiss on Twitter. And this is a podcast where we help you navigate through web development and raise the bar for your content creation. So yeah, basically just a weekly fun podcast we get to do where we get to just hang out and talk about all of the things that we're interested in. So across this streaming series, what we're going to do is we're going to build a remix application that pulls data from the Notion API. So that's where we're going to start. Because the way that Simon and I organize ourselves is we have this shared Notion. And on this shared Notion, we basically just like capture all of our ideas of things that we want to do episodes on. So we have all of our released ones, we have all of our super secret ideas over here. And basically we chuck an idea in there and then we move it into planning. We slowly flesh it out and add notes. And then it becomes something like this. Oop. I hope I'm not revealing any secrets. I hope we haven't used any swear words throughout the show notes. Maybe we need to actually do a bit of an audit of these before we actually make this site live. But anyway, this is what it will end up looking like. So this is an episode that we recorded earlier today. So what is Tailwind CSS? This one has been recorded. We have an auto-generated slug for how that's going to look when we actually build our web app that we're building today. And then usually with a released episode, we would have a release date and we'd also have an audio URL. So where someone can go and stream it directly. And then we have a few notes for like things to keep in mind as we're going through the episode. And so basically, because we kind of have all of our show notes or our kind of the schedule to keep us on track written down throughout these Notion documents, it would be good to be able to build a website where we can display basically just all of this content. So it would be good to be able to, I guess, see a list of all of the different podcasts that we've recorded, all of the episodes that we've released, and then clicking on one of those episodes, be able to actually go and stream it. And then also read through the show notes if you're interested in that. Cool. So that's pretty much what we're going to build. So since this already exists in Notion, we can use the Notion API to go and fetch that data and then display it in our remix application. But then as we will see shortly, when we actually start building this application, when we start making requests to the Notion API, we may notice that it's maybe not the most performant thing, or maybe the way that we're going to go about building this application to make it a little bit easier for ourselves. We're going to use some other libraries that don't really do things super performantly either. But this is to emulate like a real world application where you have these kinds of performance problems that are out of your control. You're using a third-party API and you can't speed that up, or you're using a legacy system at work that just has a lot of cruft slowing it down. And so across the rest of the series, we're going to look at building a Cloudflare layer that sits in between Remix and Notion. So it sits in the middle, and then any requests that need to go to the Notion API go first through the Cloudflare worker. And that means that we only have to fetch those results once from Notion, and then we can just remember that returned value in a KV store, which is just a special cache that's available in Cloudflare workers. And then when the request comes in, we can immediately respond with that cached version if we have it. Otherwise, we go off to Notion and fetch fresh data. So yeah, I mean, this is sounding pretty reasonable a system so far. That's just building like a caching layer in front of a slow API. And so we want to go above and beyond with the complexity. And so we're going to make that Cloudflare worker a fully fledged GraphQL server using GraphQL Yoga. And yeah, if this is your first time playing with GraphQL, then don't be intimidated. We will go nice and slowly, or at least I'll explain the things as we're going. But I'm trying to keep these streams a little bit shorter than usual. I'm trying to keep it to 1 hour. So I'll be streaming for 1 hour today, 1 hour tomorrow, 1 hour the next day. And then, yeah, I'll probably take these streams and then turn them into kind of a more nicely edited video version. So if you are watching this later, sometime in September, then maybe look for the shorter version, unless you just like hanging out with me, in which case you can just hang out for even more hours and watch the long form version. So we have some people joining us. Got Colin Thompson saying, "Hey, love the name of the new pod. That's awesome. Thank you." And this ain't no beginner course. No, so this is going yeah, above and beyond in complexity. And what this actually is, let me go over here. The reason that we're doing this at the moment is that I have recently released this awesome course where we cache Supabase data at the edge with Cloudflare workers and KV storage. So this is an entirely free Egghead course that you can go and check out. 15 people have already completed it. It's got some pretty high reviews, so people are enjoying it. But yeah, this one only takes 28 minutes or 14 minutes on 2x speed. And I would highly recommend going and watching this. It kind of goes, well, yeah, I'm trying to pick a slightly different example. That's why we're using GraphQL and we're using the Notion API. But yeah, basically, if you pair a similar pattern to what we're doing now, pairing that with Supabase, you get the additional benefits of being able to subscribe to changes in your database, and yeah, do some of the magic for you. Which is very cool. But go and check out this course because it is great. And it's what I've been working on for the last like 6 months. So, make me feel like I haven't wasted my time. So what else were we going to do? So yeah, since we can't actually subscribe to changes in the Notion database, they don't publish webhooks for if you update a value. So what we would want to probably subscribe to is like anytime anytime one of these cards is moved into a different column. So let's say that I've actually had the time to edit the audio from today's stream. We could move it from recorded to ready to release. And that's usually where we have it when it's scheduled to go out on Anchor. And then I guess when we drag that into released, that's when we would want to trigger this flow to go and automatically update the cache that there's a new value there in the database. But we can't do that automatically with Notion. And so we are going to set up a scheduled task in Cloudflare. And that's just going to allow us to basically check again every day to make sure that, to see if anything has changed. And if it has, then it can refresh the cache, refresh the KV store. But yes, if all of that sounds scary and all of it sounds like a whole bunch of new technologies and new fun things, then yeah, don't worry. We will go through it slowly. We will look at each piece individually, and it's not actually as scary as it sounds. And Colin is saying, "I love you to advance things with simple tools." That's awesome. I would say that's probably like my goal right there. So that's fantastic that you have picked up on that. I think I really enjoy kind of getting messy with complicated tools that have some problems, and then building like really clean, nice resources to show people that it's really not that scary. So hopefully I'll be able to do that now. Otherwise, let me know if it's actually terrifying, and maybe I'll rethink the content that I'm creating. So I think that's everything I wanted to go through. Yeah, check out the course. The course is awesome. Hang out with me for the next 3 days. Let's build something fun. And then we will actually have a website for the NavBar because it's been on my to-do list since we started the NavBar, and we're now like 7 episodes deep, and I think it took us 4 weeks to get started. So it's been on my to-do list for about 11 weeks, and I haven't touched it. So this is my way of making me actually do the work, is creating content that can benefit other people, and then I actually, prioritize it enough to get it done. So I guess let's get started because we don't want to waste too much time. We gotta fly through this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new remix app. So we're doing this all the way from scratch. We're starting with an empty application. So we're going to say create remix, and then we're going to call this one the-navbar. This is going to ask us some questions about how to create how we want to create our new remix application. So I'm going to say yes to install the create remix package. It's then going to ask us whether we are going to use, I think the next question is JavaScript or TypeScript, maybe. What do people think? What does the chat think? Should we go with JavaScript or TypeScript? Okay, so first we get this option to say, do we want just the basics or do we want a pre-configured stack that's ready for production? So basically, there are these awesome stacks that exist for Remix where you can start a project from a template that's ready to just deploy to production straight away. So you could, I think there's one called the Superfly stack, which uses Supabase and then deploys to fly.io. So this is a way to have all of that kind of plumbing set up for you. But we're going to start with just the basics. We're going to go from scratch. We then get a choice of where we want to actually host this. I hadn't actually thought this through, but I guess if we're using Cloudflare, we should probably use Cloudflare Workers. I'm just not sure if this is going to cause us. I don't think this will cause us any problems. No, it won't cause us any problems. TypeScript or JavaScript? Colin says TypeScript. Again, to try and keep this as fast as possible, I don't want to spend too much time typing stuff, and I also don't want to spend too much time styling stuff. So I think we'll go with JavaScript for this example, but if you're familiar with the syntax of TypeScript, then this would be an awesome extension to take what we cover in this stream and then maybe take it a little bit further. But if people are really keen to see a TypeScript version, then maybe when I create like a more edited video of this, maybe I could actually do it in TypeScript instead of JavaScript. But yeah, let me know. All right, Colin says it's all Tyler. Tyler's also voting for TypeScript, knowing that I try to avoid it as much as possible in our Superbase happy hours. So I've made him very sad. Tyler, will you post all of the types in the comments every time I need to write a type? It's all right. We'll go with JavaScript, and maybe I will go and retype it later and make it all nice. But in the interest of getting this done across the next 3 days, we are going to go JavaScript. That is not a limitation of TypeScript. That's a limitation of me. And also, I want to make this as accessible as possible. So like if someone is watching this that isn't familiar with TypeScript, it might be a little bit intimidating doing this in TypeScript. Whereas, I feel like it's easier to add types to JavaScript than it is to, write TypeScript if you've never seen it before. So we are going to run npm install, and hopefully we don't get any errors or any craziness, anything that's going to stop this stream from going ahead. How is everyone going in the chat? Where are you tuning in from? What time is it where you are? Is it crazy inconvenient? Because it's kind of convenient for me this time. It's the last hour of the day for me. So this is between 4 and 5 p.m. here in Melbourne, Australia. But I assume that for most people, it's probably not as convenient a time. But yes, these streams will also be available on YouTube permanently on my YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/c/John Myers, you can go and watch these anytime. And as I said, I'll make a nicer kind of shorter video that'll go through this a lot more quickly. All right. Colin's coming to us from Bangkok in Thailand. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So I guess it wouldn't be too ridiculous a time, maybe like 3 p.m., 2 p.m. in Bangkok. I think maybe something similar to Tyler, who's up in Japan. I think it's maybe about 1 or 2. But yeah, thanks for joining us. All right, so we've got a new project now. If I go ls and and we could find it somewhere in these examples, we would probably see the NavBar. So we're going to change into that directory, open it up in VS Code. Oops. And if we have our routes folder, if you're not familiar with Remix, quick overview. Everything starts at this root file. So this is like the outermost part of your entire HTML tree. So you can edit the HTML, anything in the head, anything in the body, and then this outlet is where each of your routes will render. So our routes, inside the routes folder, we have index.jsx. If we were to make like an about.jsx, then if we navigated to /about, that would be the page that would render. So nice, easy file-based routing. And yes, if you have any questions as we go as well, I will try to remember to keep glancing at the chat and seeing if anyone has any questions. But yeah, if you have any questions about Remix, any questions about the Notion API as we're going through it, I think the stream today will just focus on those two. So we'll build a Remix app, we'll make a request to the Notion API, and then that will probably be as far as we'll get today. And then tomorrow, planning to build the Cloudflare side of it, and maybe even start the GraphQL side. We'll see how long that takes. And then day 3, planning to wire it all up properly and deploy it to prod and do all of that stuff. So we should actually have like the real NavBar website that we're going to be using, maybe not fully styled, but yeah, we should have it in production, ready for Simon to take over on the styling side of things hopefully by the end of these 3 days. All right, cool. So we have some just like boilerplate content here. So if we were to say npm run dev, we're now listening over port 8787. So when you're developing a regular Remix application, it'll usually be port 3000. But since we're doing a Cloudflare workers project, this is using something called MiniFlare, which is like a mini server that sits in front of our Remix application. So we need to go to port 8787 for this one. And then this is the content that we're seeing from I'll just rearrange these a little bit. So this is this welcome to Remix, and this list of links is what we're seeing here on the page. So if we were to say welcome to the NavBar, and then I like to use these 2 emojis. I don't think I've even explained it to Simon yet, but there's like, I keep using a burger and then a chocolate bar anytime I'm referring to the nav bar, and it's because it's a hamburger menu is what like a nav menu is usually referred to as, and then bar, a chocolate bar. And so I hope that's made sense to at least one person, because I realized I haven't actually addressed that in any way, and it probably is on every single one of my tweets. So hopefully I haven't confused people too much. I'm going to get rid of this styling here. And if we refresh, we see welcome to the NavBar. So how much time should I spend on this? I wanted to at least install Tailwind so that it was there running in case we wanted to do some styling as we're going along. Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump into it. So let's install Tailwind on Remix app. There is a really good guide on the Tailwind docs where it basically tells us to create our Remix application and then run npm install and then these things that we need for Tailwind. So I can do this, and it's here. And then we're going to run npx Tailwind CSS init. So this is using the Tailwind CLI to initialize a project as a Tailwind project. So we can run that here. Basically, all that does is just create our config files. So we now have a tailwind.config there we go. Tailwind.config file, which is where we might add stuff if we want to customize it. And so what we want to do here is we want to add content under our module exports. Oh, get rid of this one. And then we need to modify our scripts. Oh, I remember this being slightly complicated because we're using miniflare. So maybe Tyler can help me out if I get stuck because he was here last time we worked through this. But in our package.json file, if we have a look at our scripts currently, I'm just going to dump these new ones here. So this is what we want our build script to be. So this is running npm build CSS and then remix build. And so, yeah, so I guess if we move this one up here, so we have a build CSS command, and then we just take this part from in front of here and put it up here. Cool. So we're running npm run build CSS and then running npm remix, and then running remix build. So that's our build script done. Our dev script uses concurrently. And I think there was a confusing thing where our dev script up here, we're running miniflare, and we're also, we're using run p, I think, which runs two things concurrently. But what we can do is say, ooh, I wonder if this is how we did it last time. Maybe I can just say, let's run npm run dev colon tailwind, and then also run this stuff. And then maybe I could make this tailwind and move it up here. But I want it maybe here. Cool. And then that runs our dev CSS. Okay. Wait, does that make sense? Because then this is running, yeah, remix dev. Okay. All right. That, I think, might work. Can you hear the confidence in my voice? I'm sure it'll work. So then we need to create a styles.style/app.css file. So under here we have styles/app/css. What was it? Styles/app.css. Styles/app.css, and then we want to put these ones in here. And then we want to import styles from ./styles/app.css in our root file. So remember, I said earlier that our root.jsx file is like where the topmost level of our application. And so if we want Tailwind to be accessible across all of our application, then we want to load it up in this file. So up here, we can dump this out and maybe move this up the top. I somehow duplicated it. Cool. So we're exporting a function of links, which is automatically injected in by Remix here. So that should be all we need to do here. Then we just need to run npm run dev and see if it actually works. How much confidence do you have? Let's see. Was that errors or is that just error? Could not locate that. Uh-oh. npm run build, just in case. And npm run dev. This is not looking good. Tailwind w blah blah. Let's have a look. So concurrently run npm run dev css blah 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 blah. So that's taking ./styles. Yeah, which is not in the app folder, so that should be fine. Styles slash, sorry, that's ./styles/app.css. So that should be loading this file, and then the output should be in our app folder, in a styles folder, which it's now created, and using our app.css file. And then, yes, that should be working. So what was the error? That it can't find serve. Could not locate at remix run /serve. Please verify you have it installed to use the dev command. Well, that sounds confusing. All right, let's see. So it's detected that we haven't actually used anything. So let's say class name for this can be text Excel. And this should be all good. In our root, we're importing styles from /styles. So that's this one, which is in the same folder, our app folder, into styles, into app.css. So this should be loaded. And then this is what we're passing through as the href here. And links should automatically be injected in. So this is looking right to me. Am I just being silly and thinking that that actually matters? And nope, it's not running. All right. All right. Tyler, what's happened? Colin is asking, how did you come up with the idea for this app? Did it come from your personal life or work life? This actually came from wanting to do exactly this. Like, the Notion API is really, really powerful, but if you need to get all of the a list of all of the if you're building a blog or something, a list of all of the blogs, and then a list of all of the content within the blogs, you end up having to make heaps and heaps and heaps of requests to the Notion API. So while it's not very it's not slow at serving up one request, but it's slow at serving up what's called an n+1 request, where you're selecting a collection of things and then making an additional request for every single one of those things that you're selecting. And so, yeah, I think just the idea of that being slow and wanting to make it faster, and then you can do that with building a static site or whatever with Next.js or something like that. But wanting to pair that with caching that data at the edge. Yeah, I think it came from me getting interested in Remix, because Remix really pushes you to they don't have a way to do a built-in way to do static file generation. They don't do static sites. You can do it with your own custom headers, like cache control headers, but they really push if the reason that you're building a static site is because the API is slow, maybe you need to fix the API instead of building a static site. So kind of going with that concept of maybe fix the root of the problem instead of just abstracting away the problem. Kind of got me interested in this whole idea of well, how do you make things as fast as possible? How do you make an API as fast as possible? And I think the answer to that is by having everything available at the edge, because the edge is a collection of CDN nodes that are as close to your users as possible. And so if someone like me in Australia, anytime I'm requesting resources from America, it takes a long time. And so if here in Australia, I can request resources from a server here in Australia, and then that can serve up the application, but it can also serve the data from a cache, then that is super convenient. So really just scratching my own itch and being selfish and wanting to solve my own problem. Simon's joining us from the NavBar account on YouTube, saying John is raising the bar in navigating this live stream. Thank you for the support, Simon. Well, yeah, I could make you fix it because it's a Tailwind problem. No, I'm joking. So I might just work out what this is off stream. Oh, even better. If you have been following my content, you will know that we do a weekly stream called Happy Hour stream, the Superbase Happy Hour. which is where Tyler and I get to hang out every single week, which is awesome. And we had to solve this exact problem on the stream. Only I had Tyler in the stream with me and could rely on him to solve it. Whereas now it's up to me. But I can use our example, which I think is Happy Days. So if we open this up, this should be like literally exactly the same setup so far. So if I close this down, I think this is exactly what we need. And we can do a quick compare just so that we can see what's different. Oh, where are we? All right, we got our package.json. If we dump this one here, our build is doing that. That's fine. Our build CSS is doing that. Our dev remix is fine. Our dev mini flare hasn't been changed. Our dev one is just running remix build and that. And then, so how is this dev CSS being run? I wonder. But yeah, maybe we just don't actually need this bit. Let's see, remix build and remix blah, 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 blah. Because this is then running all the other dev scripts. So I was wasting my time. I did not need to actually do that. Cool. So then that should be fine. That's all good. All right, let's see if this works. Let's get rid of these. And we will run our this one again, npm run. Nope, we're in Happy Days. The NavBar npm run dev. Okay, cool. That was all it was. All right, just silly me doing unnecessary things that I didn't actually need to do. Cool. So if we now I'm just wondering why it's not big, but I think that's just because XL isn't actually that big. So if we say 4XL, yes, we see it go 4XL. Sweet. Okay, cool. So Tailwind is there. So now we can hope that Simon can make this beautiful later while we power on with getting the data wedged into the application. So we have created our remix application. We have set up Tailwind. So I guess we can just create a route to display our actual episodes. So we're going to say episodes.jsx. And in here, we want to export a loader. It will be async. And it'll do some stuff. And then we want a new component called episodes. And this is going to return some episodes stuff. And then we want to export default episodes. Oh, so close. Episodes. Cool. So now if we navigate to /episodes, we get an error that this isn't actually returning us anything. So we can just return null from here, just so we're being explicit and saying, we know we're doing the wrong thing. We know we're not returning anything and we don't want to return anything. So we now need to pull some data from Notion. We have 25 minutes. Do you reckon we can do it? We'll have to see. All right. So Notion has the Notion API, which is awesome. And yeah, there's really good guides on here for how to actually use the JavaScript library and how to like create a client and make a request. And anytime you want to do anything with a particular database, you need to basically grant access to a integration. So if you click up here to view my integrations, and then we log in. That's not me. Let's see if I can quickly do this. Maybe I'll just bring over another window. Yeah, let me quickly Yeah, I'll bring over another window. So I'm just going to go to the same site. So the Notion API. And I can get rid of our lovely Happy Days code base. Thank you for the help. So now, if we go to view my integrations, I should hopefully be signed in. Cool. And you'll see that I have created one for the navbar. And so, sorry, the way that we create one is we go new integration and you can step through. You just tell it which associated workspace you would like to grant it access to. And then whether you want to do read, update, insert. So I've ticked all of these and basically given it full access and then said submit. And so that's what this one is. And that gives us a secret value here, which I'm going to avoid leaking on the stream. We'll see. I might end up leaking it accidentally. And okay, cool. That should be all we have to do. So then we have this secret value. So if we click show, you'll see like the secret value that you need to, like your API secret to talk to the Notion API. So then you need to take that value and put it into a .env file. So I'm going to move this back off screen so I don't forget that it's open. And I've lost it. So it might just pop up at some point and then you will see my secret, but that's fine. I trust you all. I trust everyone in the chat except for Simon and except for Tyler. I trust everyone else in the chat. Yeah, back to our application. We need to create a dot at the very root of our application. So you need to make sure you're not in any of these folders. And then we need to create a .env file. And this will automatically be read in by, oh, wait, no, that's not how we do it. Another, I shouldn't have done Cloudflare again because it adds some complexity that I keep forgetting about. So this .env file is not automatically loaded in. Oh, maybe it is. Let's see. Not Supabase. Notion API secret equals secret value. And now, if I wanted to access that in my loader here, I wonder if it exists. So let's console log process.env.notion API secret. And we'll need to restart our dev server. And then if we refresh our application, process is not defined. Okay, so is it just Notion API secret? So if we were using, if we were deploying to Vercel or anything like that, or if we just did a basic Remix application, then this would be process.env.notion API secret. But because we're doing this to Cloudflare and it's running with that mini flare bit in between, I think it may just inject them like this. Let's see if we rerun our application here. And then we refresh our application over here. We don't have an error, which is good. So now if we go have a look in our console, I'm just going to move our console. It's going to infuriate me. All right. If we have a look in our console, we can see secret value was printed out. So firstly, that's how we do environment variables in Cloudflare if we're deploying our Remix application to Cloudflare workers. But secondly, this is telling us something that because this isn't in the browser console, is it? We don't see it anywhere here. We're only seeing this in our server console. And that's because this loader only runs on the server. So in Remix, you have loaders and actions. They're the things that run server side. Your loader will run immediately before your component is rendered by the server. So basically, whatever you return from here will be available in your component on the first render. So you don't need to worry about like loading states and stuff like that, because all of that fetching logic happens on the server before the client even sees it. So it means that we can keep our secret values here and make requests to the Notion API. And all of that is completely secured on the server. And then we're just passing the results that we get back from Notion through to the client. So this is definitely the way that you want to do this. Okay, so we need to actually make this the value that we want it to be. And we also need a database ID. So we're going to need this in a second. So I'm just getting ahead of it. But our database ID is basically like what is the database that we want our application to have access to. So which database in Notion do we want our Remix application to be able to select data from? So if we have a look here, this is our database. And so I think maybe if we like copy, I always forget where it is. Maybe if we share from up here. Um, yes, this is a crucial part that I left out there. When you create your integration, so this one here, when you create your integration and you have your secret, you now have this integration called NavBar, or whatever you've called it. And so you need to actually grant access to a particular database, you need to invite it to that database. So here in your Notion database, if you come up to share, you need to, you see Simon and I are obviously the contributors to this, and then I've invited this integration. So all you do is just here you say navbar, and it'll look at your integrations and find whatever integration exists there that is allowed to access this. And then by inviting it to this particular, like to this database, you're granting it access to be able to select things from each of these pages. Cool. So make sure you invite that integration. But the other thing we need is we need a link to this database. So I'm going to dump this into a page here. And this has all this big scary stuff. But this thing here between the last slash and the question mark, this is our database ID. So this is the ID of that particular collection of pages. So we need to copy this value and we need to head back over to our .env file and we need to paste that in there. So we have a Notion API secret and we have a database ID. Actually, I'll make this your database ID and I'll make this your Notion API secret. And then I'll rename this .env. Whoa, don't delete it. .env .example. And then this will exist alongside the code base. So when I push this up to GitHub, if you're looking for an example, you'll be able to basically just take this file and take off the example part or the .example part and then put in your own Notion API and database ID. Cool. So I'm going to take this off screen for a second. And oh, actually, I can why don't I do this during normal streams? I can just remove me so you can see my big face and see me stepping through doing this and not needing to rearrange a whole bunch of windows. So I'm going to create a .env file and I'm going to specify a Notion API secret. I'm going to go and get that from my this one. Maybe I do need to move windows around. You just don't get to see it. I'm going to grab my secret key and I'm going to put it into this one. I'm going to grab my database ID that I just closed. I'm going to grab that from there and put it here. Save this file, close this file, and then come back to the stream. All right. I think I did it. We'll see. So again, this is our .env.example. So if you were to just like take the .example of this and then go and get your Notion API secret from your integration and then go and get your database ID by copying the link from your actual Notion thing and going and getting it from the URL, paste those in here and then make sure you restart your server and you should be all good to go. So I'm going to go restart my server before I forget. Oh, but now I'm console logging out of the thing. We can't look at the console ever again. We have to forget the console. All right, back over in episodes. I'm gonna stop console logging that out. Um, yeah. And then if we come over here, once again, I totally trust all of you. If we refresh this a few times, and now if we come over here, it should be all gone. All right, cool. Okay, everything is nice and safe now. We have 14 minutes to actually select our data. But thankfully, I prepared a little bit of this querying logic earlier because I know that playing with the Notion API is not the main point of this whole stream. So the first thing we need to do is we need to install the Notion client, which I think is at Notion. What is it actually? Let me just have a look over here. It is at Notion HQ /client. And then we can now create a client. So we can import, I think it's import from at Notion client. I think it's called client with a capital C. And then in here, we can say we want a new Notion client, which is equal to calling new client and passing it the token, it's auth. And that's going to be set to our process, not our process.env. This is going to be set to our Notion API secret. And then we also need to do another thing, which might not make sense at this point if you're not super familiar with the Notion API, but they have recently released a new version that basically makes what we're trying to do a little bit harder. So thankfully, they have a versioned API, and so we can tell it which version we want to actually load. So we're going to say we want the Notion version to be set to, and then this needs to be exactly this string. So 2022-02-22. And so this is the version of the release that we want to use. And since this point, they've released another version that just basically doesn't give you the properties. So I'll show you what I mean. So we'll be able to make a request for like all of our released episodes. So everything that's in this column. But then inside this, what we really need is like the slug for the episode, and we need the audio URL. So all of these are properties in Notion. And basically they've changed the API. I don't know if it's just if I need to explore it further, but they've made a change that means that they don't automatically fetch all of this data. So essentially you need to make an additional request for every piece of this that you need, which basically, again, it's one of those multiplier things where rather than making one request, we're now making 50 or 100 requests or whatever. So we don't want that. We just want to get all of this for free. We want to do one big, like probably not very performant request, but get all of the stuff that we need, and then cache that so that we don't need to go and get it again. But yes, so that's why we need to pass this version in here. And now we have this Notion client, so we get to do a whole bunch of scary stuff, which I'm just going to copy from elsewhere and then talk through what we're actually doing. So we are creating a new array of episodes. So this is empty, and then we're creating a new object that is an empty object. This is just a pattern that I came up with, just because most of the time I'm using the Notion API. I don't really want pagination. I want to go and fetch all of the things. And the Notion API enforces pagination by default because they don't want you to select huge amounts of data unnecessarily or accidentally. And so they force you to, like, if you are selecting more than like 100 results, then they will give you what's called a cursor. And so that's a way that you like iterate through a collection of pages. And We can read your secrets in the screen reflection in your eyes. Good one, Mehdi. That's a good point. I guess I am streaming probably in like 4K, so maybe you can like enhance, and then be able to see the secrets. Uh, need to be more careful. All right. Sorry. What we do is a loop. So do is a style of loop where we can do something while some condition. So while the data has more results, we want to go and get more results. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, Notion, go and query this database with this database ID. So we don't actually need this to be process.env because it's just our database ID in Cloudflare. But go and get from this specific database, filter everything in there based on the status where the select for status equals released. Yes, so the Notion API makes it very, very verbose and confusing. But what this is saying is go and only select the ones where the status, because this here is a select, so we can choose different options here. Only go and select the ones that are recorded. Oh, not recorded, released. So only go and get the ones that are released. So rather than going and selecting all of our ideas that aren't ready to actually deploy, all of our recordeds which aren't actually released yet, only go and get these ones that are in the released column. So that's what we're doing here, where the property status, the select equals the string released. I'm just doing a sort just to make it convenient. So go and sort these by release date. So essentially release date descending, I think means we get them in the same order here. So our most recent episode that came out today is Simon's origin story, and then my origin story. So basically the first episode that we recorded is this one down here, and the most recent episode that we recorded is this one up here. Is that right? We'll see. We'll see when we're actually displaying them in our web application. But yeah, this is how you do a sort. And then this start cursor is set to data.next cursor or undefined. It's so confusing, isn't it? But if you just follow this exact pattern, then this will just go through and paginate all of the results. So essentially, fetch the first page, fetch the second page, fetch the third page, fourth page, whatever, how many pages there are. And then we're iterating over each of them. And they basically just give you this insane blob of data that's just so much like confusing information. So we're throwing away most of it. We're just iterating over each of those results that we get back. And then we are pushing into our array of episodes. So this is like the actual piece of data we care about. We're just pushing in an object that has its ID, its title. So we need to like dig quite deep in to get its title, the slug, the release date, and the audio URL. So essentially, we're just like, instead of needing to do this on our front end and passing across a whole bunch of like unnecessary data, we're just basically like turning it from this big, ugly, confusing shape into this nice shape that kind of represents what we're going to use in our application. So we only care about the ID, title, slug, release date, and audio URL, which are basically each of these fields that matter to us. So we get an ID, we get a release date, we get a slug, and we get an audio URL. Cool. And then we're just doing that for every page. And so once we're finished with this loop, we essentially have all of our episodes in a nice shape, which we can return using the JSON helper. So this actually comes in from Remix. So do that and import JSON from remix run/Cloudflare. So again, if you're using like a node server, then this would be from /node. But since we're running this in a Cloudflare environment, we'll be pulling this in from Cloudflare. Cool. So then whatever we return from our loader will then be available in our component. But the way that we get it is we use so we want to get our episodes. We can get those by calling use loader data, which is a hook that again comes to us from Remix. And so this is just going to get back whatever is returned from our loader. So here that would be our array of episodes. And then rather than printing out episodes here, I'm just going to do a quick dirty trick to print this out to the screen or dump this big blob of JSON out on the screen. So I'm going to say JSON.stringify episodes and then say the second parameter is null and the third parameter is 2. And all this does is pretty print whatever we got back. Sorry, rather than capital E episodes, we want lowercase e. So whatever is in this big object, just pretty printed out to the screen. So if we refresh, we see a big blob and we've got just the data that we need. So we've got an ID, a title, a slug, a release date, and an audio URL. So we're successfully getting that from the Notion API. And if I refresh, like it's not super slow, but like it takes, well, that didn't take long, but it takes a little bit to go and get it. And then when we click on one of these episodes, we want to display all of the actual markdown content in that page. So that's where it gets a little bit more complicated and confusing. And yes, Simon is saying this is a great example of something you want to do on the server in a remix loader rather than on the client. So yeah, because we're selecting data from a database, we have a whole bunch of secret values. We definitely don't want to do that on the client. We want to do that on the server and then just pipe that data through to our component. All right, we have 4 minutes left. So I'm going to quickly, how should I do this? Yeah, let's see if I can do it. Well, I'm going to quickly do one of these, and I'm just going to replace our pretty printed version with this. Whoops. So we're still just getting the episodes. We're just now rendering a div, which is just taking up the minimum height of the full screen. It's displaying flex. It's got a max width on the column, and then it's floating that column to the middle. So we'll see what that looks like in a second. And then we have another div, which just has a max width of 64 and padding of 16. Or there was TypeScript. That's why there's a colon any. That's how we write TypeScript. But yes, we're just iterating over each of the episodes, and then we're rendering out a link, which we need to bring in from Remix. The key is the episode.id. Where we're going is the episode slug. Setting prefetch to intent. So this means if the cursor hovers anywhere near that link, then it's going to go and prefetch those results. So it's going to go and make the request because it knows the loader that's associated with that route. Remix can automatically go and fetch that before we even navigate to the page, so that when we do click on it, when we do click on that link, it can do just a nice client-side transition because it already has all of that data. And I'm just setting the class name to block, so it displays it in a list. So that should look something like this. Cool. So we have each of these. And then when we click on one of these, it takes us to /episodes/ and then the slug for that particular episode. And so we want to really quickly try and build that page that we're going to go to. So over here, we're going to probably not explain this as well as we should, but we're going to create a folder called episodes. And then inside there, we're going to create a $slug.js. So if this episodes folder matches a file called episodes, then what this does is creates, this should be .jsx if that's distracting anyone else. Yeah, so if this folder is called the same as this outer file, this outer component, then this component will wrap whatever is inside here. So I'll just show you what I mean. If I create this episode component, and from here we just return episode, and then we export default episode. So now, if we click on one of these, we shouldn't get a 404 anymore, but nothing changes. We don't see anything here. No matter which one we click, we don't see that message anywhere. And that is because we haven't actually specified an outlet to render that. So you remember I said back up in the route.jsx file, this outlet is where whatever one of your routes you're navigated to loads. And that's because this root file wraps each of these components. So that's using the same kind of nested routing structure. So this episodes.jsx wraps around episodes slug, but we need to tell it where to actually render by using one of those outlets. So if we want to render that here, we just render an outlet. And again, we need to bring that in from React Router DOM. When we save this and go back to our application and refresh, outlet is not defined. Did I not just bring that in? Outlet? Refresh. Okay, cool. So now we see episode up there. And no matter which one of these we click on, we see episode forever, which is good, but we want to see the content of each of our episodes. So again, I'm just going to quickly copy and paste this just so that we can see it working before I finish up this stream. So again, we're going to need a loader. So let's export const loader equals async. And we're just going to dump this in here, which is a big scary thing. Oh, I even had that already. Whoops. All right. Our loader is an async function, and this automatically gets passed params. And so params.slug is going to equal whatever this value is. So remember, we said that the dynamic part of our route is slug. So params.slug is going to be equal to what gear do you need to create content. So again, we're creating a Notion client. We haven't brought in any of the things that we need to bring in. So we'll bring this in. Oh, no. Try again. It's not going to let us. All right. All right. We will import client there. So we're creating our Notion client, and then we want to query our databases again for that particular database ID, but this time we want to filter on the property slug. And because that slug is a formula, like an Excel formula, we need to say the formula string equals, and then it's slash episodes and then slash whatever this part of the slug is. So if we have a look at here, this slug is automatically generated. So if I change the name here to Simon's Origin Story number 2, you'll see that that's automatically appending that onto the end of our slug. So this is a calculated field that's based on this title. So it's automatically slugifying this title and putting slash episode slash in front of it. So if we want to check that that property equals that, we say we want the slug to equal slash episodes slash params.slug. So that's going to give us back that page. So in this case, it would give us back like Simon's origin story. So this whole page with these different properties. Page.results is like an array of what we got back. And so we just want to pull out the first one. So that's our first episode, which is this. We're then using, so this is just a package that I found just to make this a little bit easier. Taking raw blocks in Notion and turning them into HTML elements that we can render to the page. So we're going to create a new client of that. We're going to pass it our Notion instance, and then we're going to pass it the ID for the page that we want to go and get the content for. And then we can turn that collection of markdown blocks into a markdown string. And then we're going to use the package marked, which just takes markdown stuff and turns it into HTML. So we're going to pass that big collection of markdown into the HTML, and then we're going to pipe that through to our component. So we need to install the Notion to Markdown package. So if we go Notion to Markdown, Notion to Markdown, I don't think it's that one. All right. It is Notion to MD. That's what it's called. So it is this one. So we want to install Notion to MD. I guess we can just take all of this, come over here and install. npm install Notion to MD. And the other one that we needed was marked, which I think is just npm install marked. And so now we need to bring in this one from Notion to MD, and we also need to bring in marked. So this one. Sorry, trying to run through this way too fast to try to just get this working. So yeah, that process again is we're using this Notion to Markdown library to go and turn our Markdown page into a collection of initially a collection of Notion blocks. So these are Notion blocks, and then we're using the same package to turn it into a Markdown string. So this is just going to be a big string of like every heading one would be replaced with like a hash, and then whatever the content is. So turning it from a Notion block into Markdown syntax. And then we want to take that Markdown syntax and turn it into HTML, and then pipe it through to our component. So here we're like constructing a new episode object. We're passing through the audio URL because we want to be able to stream the audio. And then we're passing through our HTML that we got back from there. So now in our component, if I replace this with something that looks like something that looks like this. Again, we need to bring in use loaded data. So we get our episode from our loader, and then we're just rendering out a div that's taking up the rest of the space. It's got BG Slate 700 for some colors and some padding of 16. We're then rendering out an audio, an audio element, which has the source set to our audio URL, so people can stream the episode directly from the NavBar website. And then we have this lovely, dangerously set in a HTML underscore HTML set to episode HTML. So this is just basically setting what we got back from here, from our marked function. We're just basically injecting that into the DOM. So if we save that and come back here and refresh, process is not defined because I obviously left one of those processes in somewhere here. Process.env.notion API secret. Now when we refresh, does it work? It probably does work, which is why it's taking so long, because this is the problem that we need to fix. JSON is not defined. No, it's not. So we need to import this one from Remix Run Cloudflare. Now what's your problem? All right, it worked. Awesome. I mean, it looks terrible, but it looks like it's working. So if we were to click like John's origin story and click play, look, it's our song. Awesome. So we can stream directly from here. And then, if we click Simon's origin story and wait for it to load. So that's something that, is going on. When we click like how to record a good video, it's still fetching and still fetching and still fetching and still fetching and still fetching. And you'll see whether that just got swapped out then. That's how long it takes for us to do that request now. So if we were to click like everything you need to know about the edge, we're still fetching, 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 we're still fetching. And now we've swapped out the content. So as you can see, this is not very performant and isn't really a usable application for our users. That's not really, we can't expect them to wait around that long. And even if we showed a loading spinner here, it's just kind of useless. They're just sitting around waiting. Like, why are we making them wait staring at a loading spinner when we could cache that data at the Cloudflare layer and be able to serve it up to them as quickly as possible. So that's what we're going to look at in a future stream, which will be tomorrow. So as I said at the top of this, I am going to stream tomorrow and the next day at the same time. So around 4 till 5 my time, which is definitely not the same time for you unless you're Simon. And so, tomorrow we're going to jump into the Cloudflare side of stuff. So we're going to learn all about caching. We're going to learn all about the edge, and we're going to learn about KV storage and how to serve that data up as quickly as possible. And if we get a chance, we'll jump into the GraphQL side of things. But I suspect that tomorrow we will, get stuck on something else and probably not get to GraphQL until the last day of these streams. But you never know. We'll see how it goes. So again, if you're interested in this topic and you want to take it further, I highly recommend you go and check out my entirely free Egghead course, which is Cache Superbase Data at the Edge with Cloudflare Workers and KV Storage. It is a super awesome course, very highly rated so far. It's only 28 minutes long, so it definitely won't take you long to complete, and goes through like an even more advanced version of what we're going through in these streams. So highly recommend you check that out. If you somehow found this without following me on Twitter, make sure you head on over to twitter.com/JohnMyers_IO and give me a follow. And also head on over to my YouTube channel, which is probably where you're watching this right now. And yeah, hit that subscribe button, hit that little notification bell, so you can get notified the next couple of days when I'm going live with this and any other time I'm doing stuff. If you have not done so yet, I recommend you check out the NavBar podcast. And so this is available on anchor.fm, but as you can see, it's available on everything. So if you have an iOS device and you want to use Apple Podcasts, or a Google device and use Google Podcasts, or any of these ones here, including Spotify, go and subscribe to our podcast there and hear us tell you about navigating the web and raising the bar for your content creation. We have also just launched a Twitter account. So head on over to twitter.com/the_navbar and give us a follow there as well. And I don't know if we've set up the proper channel yet, but if you head on over to youtube.com, Simon, do you have a quick URL in the chat? We do have a new YouTube channel, which I'll make sure is in the comments for this. In the description of this video, so you can check it out. But that is it from me. Thank you so much for joining me for this stream. Sorry, it went a little bit over. But yes, tomorrow we will learn all about caching data in a KV store in Cloudflare. I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. My name's John, and this is Simon. We've worked as content creators for some time and wanted to share delicious knowledge from the cookie jar. So if you got some time, you're welcome to the NavBar.